This week on Arizona Illustrated, the impact of recent Supreme Court decisions.
My heart was racing really fast, so I couldn't really believe what had happened.
The Batwoman.
Oh, yes, you're a very pleasant animal. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
The last helicopter out of Saigon.
From the embassy that day, the Marine Corps evacuated 985 Americans, which was pretty significant.
And a shelter for the vulnerable, the inn.
The time that we are able to spend with them, that time ends up being life-changing on both the guests as well as to the volunteers.
Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. The AZPM crew and I are here at Sweetwater Wetlands west of the city, and even though we're outdoors, we're still doing what we can to combat coronavirus through physical distancing and wearing masks. However, the number of people testing positive for COVID-19 continues to exceed 3,000 per day since mid-June, having been well below 2,000 per day during the 3 months previous. And our state's increase in positive results has far surpassed the increase in testing. Referring to the latest numbers as brutal, Governor Doug Ducey has ordered the state's bars, gyms, movie theaters, and water parks to shut down for at least 30 days. For the latest coverage focusing on coronavirus and local community resources to help you and your family to stay safe, visit news.azpm.org. Recent U.S. Supreme Court rulings that upheld DACA and expanded the 1964 Civil Rights Act to protect LGBTQ employees surprised many who expected the court's conservative majority to decide in unison against both. Tony Paniagua spoke with Arizonans directly impacted by the rulings about what this means for their future.
In 2012, by executive action, President Obama created a program called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It allows the dreamers who apply and qualify to stay in the United States without the fear of deportation, permitting them to go to school and find employment. President Trump wanted to do away with DACA, but the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the program can remain, at least for now.
I remember when I was reading exactly from the Supreme Court block, like my hands started trembling and they started sweating. My heart was racing really fast, so I couldn't really believe what had happened because if I'm very candid, I didn't think that it was going to be a positive reaction for DACA recipients.
But it is bittersweet, she says. Justices say the current administration was, quote, arbitrary and capricious in the way it tried to undo DACA, but points out that the president does have the authority to rescind the program. Trump has vowed to try it again, and if the administration follows the proper channels next time, it could be successful. In another unrelated case, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does apply to gay, lesbian, and transgender employees in most cases. That means they are protected from being fired due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. Equal Rights Arizona and Southern Arizona Senior Pride work on behalf of this community.
This is an incredible victory because, well, it says that our nation it's a shifting. I feel like it's more important than marriage equality. You know, marriage equality, we have said you can get married on a Friday and get fired on a Monday. So that is one thing that changes with the Supreme Court ruling.
Bats have been in the headlines lately due to their probable connection to COVID-19. However, being that most bats in the United States thrive on an insect diet, and a single bat can eat up to 1,200 mosquito-sized insects every hour, you might say that they also make our backyards more comfortable and safe. Love them or fear them, bats are part of a healthy ecosystem. One Southern Arizona scientist has dedicated her life to understanding these frequently maligned mammals.
My name's Debbie Buecher. I'm a wildlife biologist, but I specialized in studying bats. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and we lived in a very old house, and we had bats in our attic. We moved in when I was 7 years old. So since I was 7, I have known about bats. I came out to Arizona to go to college. I got my master's here in Sabino Canyon. I captured 17 different species of bats, looking at activity levels, resource use, and the species diversity. Bats only have 1 pup a year, and so with 1 pup a year, and in some species there's 40% mortality in the young of the year, so it's hard to maintain a population. Someone goes in and kills some bats. To recover that population again is not easy. You can tell the health of the ecosystem at how well the bats are doing. This is August 1st, and we really have not had monsoons yet, so the creek has not flowed, and that's rather unusual. And normally the creek is flowing and there's plenty of water, but the bats are now stressed. Lactating females need water through July, and the effort to find water could be stressing them. It's a gorgeous temperature in the water. Water here, if you set a net, you're going to catch a lot of bats because they're not expecting it. The net was not here last night. You always take a bat out, the reverse that it went in. And I could tell that it had come in from upstream. So I came onto this side of the net and plucked him out. So this is the smallest bat species in North America. They're common here in the canyon. They're called a canyon bat because they love canyon lands and they live in little crevices. So this is a little male. It's a boy. So I'll get out of the way of the net and let's go and process this. You're gonna be nice and plump. Yes, you're gonna be nice and plump. All righty. And that's everything for you. We'll put a little dab of white out just to make sure we don't get you again. In Arizona, we have 28 different species, and we're a state with one of the largest species diversity. You ready to go? There you go. Part of that is because of our topographic variation. Sonoran Desert, Great Basin Desert, and Chihuahuan Desert. But then we have grasslands and all the Sky Islands and the Mogollon Rim. And so we have these stacked biotic communities which provide bats with different microclimate, temperatures, humidity, food, prey, availability to water, different roost sites. And so that allows us to have that diversity because there are all those niches for different species to make a living. But we have a number of bats that are living right here in Sabino Canyon and tolerating the heat. Oh, yes, you're a very pleasant animal. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Bugs in my throat. I don't understand what the bats see in them. We always joke, the buggier the night, the better the bats. This is a tree bat. These are quite uncommon. We don't tend to get many of these. This is an extremely cool bat. Tonight we caught the leaf-nosed bats, the Mexican long-tongued bat here, so they're a nectar bat. They would be feeding on the agaves. The evening bat, many Vespertilionids. And the freetails, we caught the Brazilian free-tailed bats. And they're probably coming from the bridges in Tucson, coming up here to get water and to feed on the insects. We had lots of insects. So that's bat food, and so there's plenty for bats to eat. I do a lot of schools, public outreach. They can hear about bats and they think bats are interesting, but then they see a bat in the hand and then they're hooked. So Eumops pirotis is the scientific name. Western Mastiff is the common name, and we call her Maggie.
Maggie.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous. Well, it is dinner time. When a bat echolocates, it shouts out a pulse of sound, and that travels out, and it hits something and it comes back, only in echoes. And it would be like you're walking, maybe everyone has, they walk down a narrow canyon and they go, hello, and you can sometimes hear, hello, 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 come back, and all you're hearing are the echoes of your call. And that's what bats are doing.
I was really interested in this kind of field school because there's nothing like this where I come from. But I've always known like they were one of our major pollinators for the hashan, the saguaro fruits. And to know that there's actually work being done and like people staying up late to even count them, I'm just really excited.
There are over 1,300 different kinds of bats worldwide, and they have different colors, different shaped ears. They forage on different foods. All right, bat number 30. We'll see what that is. I've been studying bats a bit over 30 years. I call myself the crazy bat lady because I'm so fascinated with bats. Bats have been good to me. Wildlife has been good to me. Yeah.
Just over 45 years ago, in the final days of the American involvement in the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese Army was closing in on Saigon, and South Vietnamese resistance crumbled. American service members and others began the difficult mission of evacuating as many family members and friends as possible before Saigon fell, many of whom were South Vietnamese. In 2010, AZPM's Christopher Conover reported that the last U.S. military aircraft to leave Vietnam on that last chaotic day was sitting quietly in the military boneyard at Tucson's Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
This helicopter looks like so many others in the row. Just a vintage machine at the boneyard supplying parts to others. But this CH-46 has more than 11,000 air hours and a special place in history.
This one here was the last aircraft out of Vietnam back in April 30th, 1975 during Operation Frequent Wind. This aircraft picked up the Marine Guard off the U.S. Embassy building in Saigon.
When most people think of the last helicopter out of Saigon, this is the image that comes to mind.
Actually, that famous picture you see really isn't the U.S. Embassy. That is an apartment complex down the street from the U.S. Embassy called the Pittman Apartment Complex. And that housed the CIA, a lot of CIA folks, and it also housed folks from USAID. And that aircraft was an Air America Huey that had landed on that rooftop to take out some folks. So that's, a lot of people get confused thinking that was the U.S. Embassy. That really wasn't the embassy.
Back at the embassy, the big CH-53 helicopters, along with the CH-46s, were ferrying people away from Saigon. There were a number of landing zones in and around the embassy complex. The one on the left is where the Marine Guards waited for their ride. The problem was, a misunderstanding left them without a helicopter.
The aircraft that took the ambassador, U.S. ambassador out, Graham Martin, was another H-46, just like this one. It was 154803, which is in San Diego, the Flying Leatherneck Museum in San Diego. Took the ambassador out at about 0500 in the morning on the April 30th. And the guard was left behind, and when 154803, which was call sign was Lady Ace 09, took off, it sent out a code message that said the Tiger is out. And all the other aircraft in the area thought that that meant that the mission was complete, and they all left and went back to their ships, leaving the Marine Guard on the roof of the Chancery building.
On the roof that day was Corporal John Gillian. We spoke with him from his home in Massachusetts.
I'll never forget Mate Kane saying, gentlemen, you know, we all joined the Marine Corps, we're all going to die like Marines. This could be our Alamo. And we all just looked at one another and went, oh boy.
Eventually, the Marines were able to let someone know that they were still on the roof at the embassy. That's where the helicopter call sign Swift 22 enters into history.
Later on, there was another H-46 that was was on a search mission for another aircraft that had gone down due to mechanical failure, and it was dispatched to the U.S. Embassy to pick up the Marine Guard off the roof of the Chancery building. They got the Marine Guard out around 07:53 in the morning and flew to the USS Okinawa, and that was the last aircraft out of Vietnam.
This photo was taken inside Swift 22 not long after it lifted off the roof of the embassy. The evacuation of Saigon was historic because it marked the end of the Vietnam War, but it also has another footnote in aviation history.
It was the largest helicopter evacuation effort in history, and from the embassy that day, the Marine Corps evacuated 985 Americans and 1,100 Vietnamese and foreign nationals from the embassy grounds that day, which was pretty significant.
Swift 22's time in the desert is limited. A museum is currently negotiating to have her restored so the public can get a look at the last plane out.
We checked in with Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Swift 22 is still in the boneyard, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon. A few years back, U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement asked United Methodist churches of Tucson to house families coming out of detention. This effort was life-changing for thousands of families who found temporary shelter and a welcoming path to a new life. Last September, producer David Fenster visited one of the shelters. This is the inn.
¿Cuántos años usted?
12.
12. ¿Y su fecha de nacimiento?
El 23 de mayo.
Ok.
2007.
7. Muchas gracias. ¿Y tú de Guatemala?
Guatemala.
¿Y recuerdo cuál fecha de entrar a Estados Unidos? Entrar con inmigración.
¿Ayer?
¿Ayer? Ok. Uy. Muy bien, solo una noche en detención. ¿Ya? ¿Y por dónde entramos a Estados Unidos? ¿Recuerdo qué parte?
Sonorita.
En Sonorita. ¿Y tú ir a Ohio? Cincinnati, Ohio?
Sí.
¿Y era tu hermano?
Sí.
Oh, muy bien. It's a huge privilege to be able to be in that space of welcoming these families. I don't even know the right words to use to explain it. I think comparing it to like a birth or a death is very, very valid.
Bueno, mi experiencia aquí no pensé que fuera así. Yo vengo de Cuba. No me esperé que me trataran tan bien. No esperé ver tanta amabilidad. Y las personas, los voluntarios, son muy tienen un gran corazón. The next step is in New Jersey, the house of my uncle. I fly tomorrow in airplane. I'm excited to start over a new life here. Prepare for the challenge of the life. Que la vida me sonría, ¿no? Y espero poder lograr grandes cosas aquí en el mejor país del mundo.
¿Y tú eres embarazada?
Sí.
¿Cuántos meses?
Sí.
Igual de mío. ¿Con una niña o niño?
Niño.
Un niño, otro. The families that we are seeing are families that are originating from Guatemala, Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, but also from Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Romania, Russia, China. These are all families that have fled their home with a credible fear. It's a really hard decision, and it's not the decision that they wanted to have to make. And so for some, that might have meant flying into Mexico first. For some, that may have been a bus journey through Mexico. It might have been a journey on top of the train. They make it to the Mexican-US border, and then they present themselves for asylum. Then they are taken into custody at the port and put in detention. And then once they determine, okay, yes, this family does qualify to be permitted entry into the United States to continue the process for asylum, then I receive communication from immigration. Do you have space to receive them?
My sister started first, and then I started coming with her to help. I help make beds. I cook meals. I enjoy cooking. I also do some cleaning, and I take families up to get clothing. Our mom raised us to be very open-minded and to be able to help others, whether they're from here in the U.S. or Guatemala or anywhere. We provide beds for them to sleep on, showers and towels, food, transportation to the bus station after they've talked to their families. As soon as I get here, I go down the stairs and I just feel like, oh, so much better. Just to be able to be here, like it just fills a void in my life. Like it fills whatever spot in my heart that's emptied. It just does. It just fills that void like, I'm meant to help others. I'm meant to help these families and children.
We only receive families that have minor children with them. And those are the only families that are being released by immigration right now. Every once in a while, there might be a family that it's a little more intricate of a situation. So in this case, it is a pregnant mom who was separated from her husband. They're from China and they speak Mandarin. So she came to us and was really kind of in more of a fragile space, I guess you could say. And I knew I needed to reach out and try to find someone that could speak Mandarin. Just trusting on Google Translate is a little risky.
Estaba muy bonito el viaje y también nos divertimos mucho aquí con mi hermano y nos dieron juguetes. En Ecuador no sabemos jugar con eso.
Solo yo y mis dos niños. He venido pasando por Panamá. Bueno, no he caminado, pero llegué a ese aeropuerto. Dios le bendiga. Primeramente le doy gracias a Dios por tenerme aquí en este lugar. Por el momento que llegamos nos atendieron muy bien, estamos con comida, mis niños están divertidos. Mucho gracias a Dios y a las personas que me aceptaron aquí. Me voy a Nueva York, ahí vive mi familia y quiero reunirme con mis hijos. No tengo más que decirle, darle gracias a Dios y en segundo lugar a este país muy bonito que nos da oportunidades y no lo vamos a defraudar.
I think I was driving home one day from here and I was like, why do I feel so full? Like, why do I like my soul and just everything. Why do I feel so full after my day there at the end with these families? And I felt guilty about that. You know, when you're with someone through vulnerability, it takes a lot of trust and a lot of patience. And these are people of such strength that the time that we are able to spend with them, that time ends up being life-changing on both the guests as well as to the volunteers.
Como un ladrón en la noche, mi Jesús así vendrá. Todos los que estemos listos, volaremos hacia Él. Hermanos, si te listas, no te quieres afirmar. Cuando Cristo aparezca, de seguro no te va.
Your immune system reacts to a vaccine the same way it would as if it were being invaded by a disease, by making antibodies. Here's why that's so important. In this installment of Coronavirus Pandemic, what you need to know.
The vaccine mimics an infection. It's kind of like a mock infection. It tricks our immune system into thinking that there is a real infection. So the vaccine is a tool that allows us to make antibodies before we get sick and before we were infected. So when the real infection occurs, we already have antibodies. Antibodies are molecules that are made by our white blood cells. Very good antibodies are able to bind to this virus and completely block it from doing harm to us. They're one of the latest components of our immunity that comes to combat the virus. And that is the reason why vaccination is so important, because then we have actually tilted the field in our favor, and we can actually have then the antibodies already present at the time of the virus attacking us.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.